This is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of the Waukesha, Wisconsin Christmas parade attack? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll look at the background of this case, then I'll offer my analysis. On November 21, 2021, the 58th annual Christmas parade was being held in Waukesha, Wisconsin. This is a western suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At about 4:39 p.m., an individual driving a red Ford Escape smashed through the barricades and plowed through the participants in the parade at a speed of about 40 miles per hour. A police officer fired 3 shots into the vehicle, but the SUV did not stop. Some reports indicated that the SUV was weaving back and forth as if the operator was intentionally trying to run over people. At the time making this video, 6 people have died as a result of the attack. They range in age from 8 years to 81 years old. At least 62 people were injured. The police found the red SUV and arrested a 39-year-old man named Darrell Brooks, Jr. It appears as though he made his way to a house and asked the occupant if he could call Uber for him. The occupant became nervous when police vehicles started driving by the house. He told Brooks to leave, which he did. Brooks then returned to the porch, claiming he left his identification inside the house. One of the neighbors called the police. Brooks was approached by the police as he was standing on the porch. Brooks is facing multiple first-degree intentional homicide charges and may be charged with other crimes as well. The police indicated that Darrell Brooks may have been involved in a domestic disturbance right before the attack. This incident may have involved a knife. The police said they were not chasing him when he allegedly committed the murders at the parade. Brooks is the only suspect in this attack. The police are not expecting to make any more arrests. At the time of the attack, Darrell Brooks was out on a $1,000 bond. He was facing several charges related to running over a woman with his vehicle in the parking lot for a gas station. The victim was the mother of his child. The criminal complaint indicates that the police noticed the victim had tire tracks on the left leg of her pants and blood on her face. Brooks was charged with recklessly endangering safety, disorderly conduct, battery, obstructing an officer, and bail jumping. So he was already suspected of jumping bail, yet he was given bail again, and it was only set at $1,000. The Milwaukee County District Attorney said that Brooks should not have been released on such a low bond. Darrell Brooks' criminal history extends well beyond the charges for the parade attack and the gas station incident. I will go through several of these charges. Most of these charges occurred in Wisconsin. I will specify when the charges occurred outside of Wisconsin. In 1999, Brooks was charged with carrying a concealed weapon and aggravated battery. In 2000, he was charged with carrying a concealed weapon, resisting or obstructing an officer, and the possession of cocaine. In 2002, he was charged with resisting or obstructing an officer, possession of THC, and taking and driving a vehicle without consent. In 2003, he was once again charged with resisting or obstructing an officer. He would receive the same charge again in 2005. This appears to be one of his favorites. Almost 2 months later, he was charged with receiving stolen property and possession of a controlled substance. In 2006, Brooks was convicted in the state of Nevada for statutory sexual seduction. His victim was 15 years old. In 2009, Brooks was back in Wisconsin. He was arrested on a warrant for previous charges. In 2010, Brooks was arrested for felony strangulation and suffocation, battery, and criminal damage to property. In 2011, he was charged with violating probation, possession of THC, and bail jumping. In 2020, Brooks was arrested for the possession of a firearm by someone convicted of a felony, recklessly endangering safety, and possession of methamphetamine. Allegedly, Brooks had been in a physical altercation with his nephew about an old cell phone when Brooks discharged a firearm. Many of the charges against Brooks were dismissed, but he was convicted of several, including felonies. I skipped over some of the charges in his criminal history. He's got a lot there. For example, he had multiple failure to appear charges and a few paternity warrants. In addition, it appears as though Brooks may have been in trouble with the law in other places. For example, he had once been incarcerated in Georgia. In 2021, as I mentioned, he was charged with running over his girlfriend and the murders at the parade. At the time making this video, Brooks' bail was set at $5 million. Brooks has an interesting history on social media. It appears as though he was an aspiring rapper using the name Math Boy. He claimed to be the next breakout artist from the Midwest who was finally ready to put Milwaukee back on the map. So I guess at some point Milwaukee was removed from the map, and he was just trying to get it restored. Looking at some of the lyrics of the songs, Brooks said that he was a terrorist, a killer, and he did not like the police or Donald Trump. One of his rap videos featured a red SUV that looks a lot like a Ford Escape. On a Facebook page that appears to belong to Darrell Brooks, he made a few interesting statements. In response to the Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty verdict, Brooks indicated that he was not surprised. Brooks also appeared not to be a fan of white people, advocating violence against this group, and he mentioned he had an affinity for Adolf Hitler. Now moving to my analysis. There are several questions that are brought up by this case. I will go through each one of them here. Why was a career criminal like Darrell Brooks out on bail in the first place? Some areas like Wisconsin have tried to eliminate or reduce cash bail. The idea is that when someone is arrested, they are presumed innocent. If they are kept in jail before their trial, they will lose their job, it will damage their relationships, and they may plead guilty just to get out of jail. This is something that happens quite often. In addition, the cash bail system tends to discriminate against minorities. I don't necessarily think that reducing bail is a bad idea, but I think that this plan has been executed without proper research. It's almost like lawmakers and the courts are just guessing. They're playing around with all the dials and levers on this big switchboard without knowing the effect of the changes that they're making. It's almost like the Swedish chef from the Muppets, just kind of moving around but not really cooking anything. They somehow believe that just randomly making changes is the solution to the problem, but it rarely is. I'm not really sure this whole initiative applies to Brooks in the first place, considering he was repeatedly charged with violent felonies. His bail should have been set much higher because he was a danger to the community. It's not clear if Darrell Brooks ever met a police officer who he did not resist and obstruct. Next question. If Darrell Brooks was the parade killer, what was his motive? The authorities have been very careful to avoid attributing the motive to the Rittenhouse verdict. Some in the media have gone even further, declaring that there was no evidence that the Rittenhouse verdict was a motive for this crime. I find this interesting because the parade murders occurred just 2 days after the Rittenhouse verdict, and Waukesha, Wisconsin is 55 miles from Kenosha, so they're relatively close. Who knows what the motive was, but certainly there is some evidence supporting it was tied to the Rittenhouse verdict. I think the lesson learned on this point would be that trying to make the Rittenhouse trial about racism, when it was really about the limits of self-defense, has the potential to encourage some people to be violent, especially those without critical thinking skills. There will always be certain people who don't understand the idea of dialogue and debate. They take things too far. They get really excited about an issue and want to act on it without actually doing their own research and understanding the issue. I also find it interesting that there is such reluctance to assign motives in the parade murders when the alleged perpetrator has made pretty clear racist statements. Some have argued that there is a double standard at work as far as the media coverage and speculation. It's almost like the media is not concerned with honesty. Rather, they're just pushing whatever narrative they feel aligns with their political beliefs. This is also part of the problem, which leads to distorted interpretations of various events. Moving to the last question, how can crimes like this be prevented? I think there are a few ways. Item number 1, political polarization needs to be reduced. More intelligent conversations need to occur around these topics, not just knee-jerk reactions. Some crimes are not tied to any popular political topic. Not everything has a secret or deeper meaning. At some point, irresponsible assertions can cross into the area of inciting violence. Discretion is required, and unfortunately, there is a shortage of discretion at this time. Item number 2, career criminals who have proven they cannot function in society without hurting people should be in prison. This one is pretty straightforward. Item number 3, mental health care that is mandated by the courts must be competent and meaningful. Darrell Brooks was repeatedly ordered to undergo mental health counseling. What did these counselors report about him? Did they think that he was safe? There needs to be a better relationship and communication between the mental health community and the courts. Now moving to my final thoughts. Whatever the motive was for this crime, the victims are 100% innocent. They were just enjoying the parade, not hurting anybody, when they were targeted by a killer. Whoever was responsible for this crime needs to stay in prison for life, regardless of any attempt to justify the actions. Those are my thoughts on the 2021 Christmas parade murders. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.